Hello, welcome to the Honest Wargamer for another faction reaction. This time we're doing Slaves to Darkness, and I'm joined by the wonderful and beautiful Marc. Hello, sir. How are you?
Beautiful.
Yeah, I'll take that. Yeah.
Yeah,
How's
I'll
yeah?
go with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello. I'm good. How are you, Mr. Symes?
Oh, I'm great. Thanks for asking. This is my third one today, but I want to do
Fantastic.
this faction and you justice. So I'm very excited about talking about this today. Slaves to Darkness is probably one of the most complicated factions, I think, now with the changes and everything else that's been going on.
Okay.
So very much excited to hear your thoughts on this. This is obviously being filmed in front of a live studio audience on Twitch. So there we are,
Hello,
Bobbin,
Internet.
Angle, Positive Victim, which is Darren, and also the
Whatever
Owen
that means.
Jackson. So loads of great people in the
The
chat.
Owen Jackson.
The.
No, I was playing someone at Firestorm the other day, and I name checked him because I can do that casually.
Yeah.
He's a friend, and honest to God, the guy playing said, "Was that the Owen Jackson?" And I was just like, "Yes, yes, that is the Owen
That's
Jackson."
him. That's
And
the
he's so
guy.
cool. That's the guy. He's my friend. It's so cool. I don't brag about it much, but as soon as you mention.
But I will as much as I can. Thanks to McLeod, by the way, for resubscribing. So yeah, this is obviously live on Twitch right now, but you guys could be watching it on YouTube or you could be listening to it as a podcast. So they're available in all of those places. And there's been some great other faction reactions, so do go listen to those ones as well. Marc, it's a pleasure having you on the show to talk about this. And I know
Lovely
that
to
you've
hear
already
from
got
you.
tournament games with Slaves to Darkness in under your belt. So
Yes.
before we get into Age of Sigmar 3 winners and losers and all that other stuff, let's talk about Slaves to Darkness and how you thought they played in Age of Sigmar 2. So
So,
take me through that.
okay. So, I always like to sort of envision sort of each faction has like its sort of stat sheet with like attack, defense, mobility, because
Hmm.
that's how my brain works. And I always thought that Slaves to Darkness were pretty sort of average across the board, but maybe slightly better at defense, maybe slightly better at stuff like bravery. But their buffs, I thought, were like some of the best out there. So
Yes.
you could turn like these really average units or war scroll and average only saying average by what they actually do on their war scroll,
Yeah.
and then you say, well, actually, if I put this and on, they become amazing. Like some of the best examples of that are like Marauders and Vanguard, Chaos Knights. They're all great sort of vehicles for your buffs
Yes.
by virtue of what they have on their stat sheet. So the stat sheet is Vanguard is probably the best example of this because on their stat sheet you look at it and you're like, wow, that is good. I'm not sure it's like 300 points good, but that's good. But the second you start putting buffs on them, they're like crazy good. Like
And
they're
they start from that kind of interesting place where you're already giving them a mark of chaos. So
yeah,
you're already deciding in which way you're stacking your buffs
yeah,
initially, just
that's
by
it.
even
Yeah,
just selecting the unit, and then all of a sudden you're like, cool, how am I going to add to that? And I think that's actually genuinely really fascinating.
yeah. It's how my brain tends to work with a lot of list building. It's just like you start with that, you add a mark, and you already my brain's go, ooh, where can I go with that? Where can I go with that? Ooh,
Hmm.
mark and Nurgle. That means you get +1 save and reroll wounds. Well, that's good with that. That doesn't work with that. Don't care about that. And after a long time, you put about 6 or 7 buffs on them, and you think, well, that will kill the world. And then you do the maths on how likely those buffs are going, and then you realize that it's a terrible idea.
That seems super fair.
That's how all my lists are made.
You cycle backwards. You're like, okay, let's
Cycle
make
back.
it more.
Actually, no, I'm an idiot. Yeah, that doesn't work at all.
So how did they? That was like maybe some of the core elements of the book and how like you
Yeah.
can stack buffs. But what sort of things did we see? Like what playstyle would you say that they had in second edition? Like what was really being used well or a lot?
To be honest with you, in towards the end of second edition, this was kind of, but when they came out, I think it was just before COVID, was it?
Yeah, it was
The
just
book.
before. Yeah, yeah. So it wasn't
so
long after
so
the
the
ogre's
only
book.
so the only meta I can really talk about was sort of the TTS meta.
Yeah.
So you saw some builds with demon princes initially. This is
Hmm.
after they were the Nurgle one was buffed, tragically, I might add.
Hmm.
Um, Corn Demon Princes seem to be quite good because of that command ability, which is worth mentioning still, I think.
Yes.
So you have the run and charge of guys wholly within 18 of a Demon Prince model, and nowadays with smaller boards, that's even more powerful.
Yeah.
So you were seeing that, and the Demon Princes themselves um, were quite well. They had like always stripes first on them, so they're quite good in combat and will go before you. In addition to that, in despoilers, you could like pick a target piece of terrain and say you can't shoot me through that. That blocks line of sight. So you had an army then that was potentially capable of dealing with quite a lot. Like, so you can't charge me, you can't shoot me. You're going to have to deal with me on my terms. And usually that involved teleporting marauders around and then watching the auto charge. That's something I probably should mention off the bat, by the way. Yep. Marauders' charge is a pretty unique ability, which pretty much guarantees you're going to get the charge off from a 9-inch teleport, which I think is pretty unique in Warhammer.
I think almost like isn't it something like crazy? Like from Deep Strike, you've got like a 98% chance to make the charge.
Double one messes it up. I think, yeah, that's it. A double one is the only thing that messes up. It's happened to me before. I'd like to add, not that I'm bitter about that, but I bring it up constantly. Yeah, it does happen sometimes. So it's one of those things. You know when you like hit on the 2, you're just assuming that's going to hit.
Yeah,
it's like that twice. Double one. Anyway, never mind. Rant over. Hi. Marauders, they're very, very useful and very unique. So you'd see a lot of lists built around that mechanic in itself. So teleporting them 9 inches away and pretty much just guaranteeing that they're going to get the charge off, which is something unique to Slaves to Darkness, and a lot of people built lists around, myself included. And also, of course, Archaon, which wasn't necessarily something you saw in Slaves to Darkness, but he pops around in every other faction, like just about, because he's another, as I said, a good vehicle for buffs. And I think works in other factions as well.
Yeah, I think that's one of the really interesting things, like, because Archaon's home book, obviously, is Slaves to Darkness book, but actually probably was the place he was seen least. Like, I know that, like, during the Stat Center and all of the so the Age of Sigmar Stat Center, which we do on a Monday, and like all of our tournament coverage, because obviously you've had a few people pushing Slaves to Darkness around. You've got Dave Kerr over in Australia. You've had some American players pushing them around as well. And obviously during lockdown, which was mainly like where it mainly saw play on TTS, we saw it played a lot. And I think it felt like you played Plague Touch Warband and then you cycled backwards from there, is how it felt. Like from
that was the Knights of the Empty Throne. That's one I didn't mention, is it? Even though that's what
Plague Touch Warband was. Plague Touch So Plague Touch Warband was the War Scroll Battalion previously. So I think that was one of the things that was really important to talk about. That was really effective because it really made even some units like Chaos Warriors like pretty good. And then people like moved around which sub factions they were playing. But I think eventually people settled on a particular sub faction. I don't know what you thought about that.
Well, personally, it was Knights of the Empty Throne for me. I can't believe I forgot about Plague Touch, that thing. Yeah, Plague Touch. That was essentially when you wound them on a 6, you take a mortal wound. So you could basically look for units that were going to have a really good save roll, so that all those mortal wounds they were going to do back on themselves were going to do nothing to you, and you could outgrind your opponent from there. So stuff like Vanguard with a 3-up save, already very good. You're looking at Chaos Shrines that were those things that would not only take quite a beating, but give out the +1 save buffs and stuff like that. Became really, really strong. Chaos Warriors, as you said, for the same reason, very strong, and Chaos Knights as well. Stuff that's easily buffable with saves, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so it felt like they had a very combat-y playstyle, like you say, with a lot of synergy.
Oh yeah, no shooting.
No shooting. Yeah, wasn't a part of the process, and also no summoning really to any degree. Like
a little bit. You can summon. I'll get into this later, but you can summon stuff from the Eye of the Gods table, which is something you don't see a lot because, just the builds tend to be going around. But certain heroes, when they kill a hero or monster, they get to roll on the table. You can still summon 10 horrors that way. So it's not nothing. Also, the Gaunt Summoner summons, 5 horrors or 10 plague bearers. So it's not nothing. But and the Ravagers, thinking about it as well, they do summon as well. They summon 10 marauders a turn, more or less.
Yeah.
So it's not what I would call a summoning heavy army, but it's got
has
some
options.
as option. Yeah, that's
Okay.
it.
All right, so I think that's fair. And Slave Starters generally did okay in the Age of Sigmar 2 stats,
Yeah.
just for everyone at home. They didn't do terribly. I think one of the interesting things, though, it was one of the most stolen from books. Like you take a 10 Chaos Knights out here, a Carcadrak Lord for your Khorne army here,
Yeah,
an
exactly.
Archaon
Yeah.
for your Tzeentch list here. It was the most pilfered book. So
It
before
was.
yeah, definitely. So before we talk about the winners and losers, let's talk about Age of Sigmar 3 as is,
Let's.
like, and your thoughts, like, so what do you think, how are you feeling about it, what's really standing out to you, like, feel free, this is open territory for you right now.
Wow. No, I love it on the whole. It might just be the newness of a new edition, but it feels like another puzzle for like to solve. That's kind of like how I enjoy this hobby. It's if they release a new book, I go through it. There's like 3 factions I sort of mainly pay attention to. That's Nurgle, Skaven, and Slaves to Darkness. So one of those guys comes out, I'll pick up the book and I'll instantly think, oh, how am I going to make this work? How's this going to go? And now it's like I've got all 3 resets at the same time. So arrogantly enough, I feel like I've got a pretty good grasp of Slave to Darkness already. I already feel like it's more a very like the list I played with you last weekend. We'll get onto that in a minute. I feel it's a very strong Slaves to Darkness list. So now I'm looking at the other 2. So it's great to have another set of puzzles to solve. I love the back and forth nature of it. I love the fact that you're thinking of stuff to do and your opponents have to just screw them over. I love the fact that you've got battle tactics to think about each round, which are so important. As I found as I've been playing it, like the difference in not making it is often the game. If you pick the wrong one for one turn, that will be the difference, I find. So I love that. The only thing that worries me about it is actually the kinds of lists that I'm starting to take. But because the meta swings around to adapt to stuff like that. So big saves on big heroes is what I'm fearing at the moment, because they're very, very difficult to punch a hole in if you don't have access to mortals.
Yeah.
So I think there's just too many lists with that as the theme at the moment. Of course, I have faith that the game has enough options universally to be able to get around that problem. But at the moment, it's like, I hope it's not just all this. So we'll see. I'm hoping the meta will. I'm already thinking of Skaven lists to get around it, and I'm pretty confident I can. But you never know.
You don't, and I think
Yeah.
I think that's mirrored in like the conversation we just had with Jacob. If you're watching this
Yeah.
in order back on YouTube or listening to the podcast in order, he was talking about Marathi obviously and like X amount of wounds.
Yeah, that's one of them.
That's one of them. Archaon's one of them. Yeah,
Archaon's a big one.
He's a big one. The Gash is one.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think this is going to be like a constant conversation with this edition. So I agree with you 100%. Battle tactics also. How do you feel like? What do you think is the best solution for the battle tactics? Do you think it would be good to kind of get off book at home, kind of keep reading them through 3 or 4 times, just so you kind of know what they are, and playing?
Just play like for instance, the games I've played, it becomes obvious that the running one is a good one to start with, or at least it's a very easy one to start with. There's also something to be said by trying to achieve ones that would be difficult later on, early, to get them out of the way. There's lots of ways of thinking about this. There's also, if you can use the Metamorphosis spell to try and create yourself a 3rd monster for the run one, or create yourself a monster that does one of the battle tactics to give yourself the extra point. There's lots of little things like this that is very exciting to me. Like as little extra things you can get that will just maybe push yourself past your opponent and stuff like that.
Agreed.
But so if as I said earlier, if you can deny your opponent through a clever use of command points or redeploying, for instance, to stop them getting their battle tactic, and think about that far enough in advance, I think you'll do well in this edition. That's my thoughts on it. Anyway,
I think that's super valid. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk Age of Sigmar 3 Slaves to Darkness. Let's talk winners and losers. I'm ready. I'm ready to learn. I'm sat here ready to learn.
So a bit of a disclaimer with this, especially when I get onto the losers, because I don't think there are many losers. They're just less good.
Okay, that's fair.
So I'm not saying they're good. I'm not saying they're good or bad. I'm just saying they're better or worse.
Yes.
Okay. So should we do winners?
Yeah, yeah, I'm ready.
So an obvious, okay, obvious one, Archeon,
Yep.
big winner. So he's got the thing with Archeon. He's got a 4-up mortal wound save, I believe, that bounces stuff back. And now it's a lot easier to stack saves. I know it only works out as +1, but when you're on a 3-up or 2-up in some extreme cases armor save base, that means you're basically looking at a 2-up unrendable armor save if you stack it correctly, which most players will. So he's a big, big winner. So he's very difficult to deal with now. It's getting to the point where a lot of the time is like he's 800 points, so just kill the rest of the army.
Yep.
If that's such an option, but that still leaves you with this 800 big blob of FU just coming towards you, slicing you up.
It's also a big ask, I think, in some situations.
Yeah.
Like, run around this incredibly fast
kill
bot.
It's so easy to say, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, just ignore him. Just kill the heroes, mate. It's easy. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it is a big ask, and I think in this edition, I'm always trying to think of, when I'm writing a list, I'm trying to think of, okay, well, how am I going to deal with that stupid dickhead dwarf, or how am I going to deal with Archeon? How am I going to? Maybe I'm even starting to think, how am I going to deal with Vanguard? Which leads me on to my next unit, Vanguard. So they also have a 3-up save. And in Knights of the Empty Throne, they become heroes, so get access to all this lovely stuff that heroes are now getting. Which, in particular, what's it called?
In their finest hour.
Their finest hour. That's the one. I think someone called it Happy Tuesdays or something earlier.
Happy Tuesdays.
Happy Tuesdays.
My best day ever. Yeah.
Yeah, my best day ever. So that gives them off the bat another +1 save. So they're already on 2s. All that defense puts it in another one, so they're a 1-up save. Very hard to deal with. In the Mark of Tzeentch as well, which I'm gonna list as a unit. The Mark of Tzeentch.
Okay.
They get to because it's the biggest winner, I think. They get to reroll saves of 1.
Yep.
Now reroll. Now in GW's credit, they went through a lot of the War Scrolls, and they seem to have gone, reroll save, not anymore. You're gone.
Yeah,
and I think that was they could have just kept them all in and just say, "We'll wait for your next book." But fair play to them; they went for everything. But Tzeentch, the Mark of Tzeentch in
and you think that's a positive change?
Yeah, big time. Because you won't be killing a lot of these things if you didn't have rerolls to save.
Yeah.
So it's good for the game. I'm saying it's not necessarily good for the unit that's had that nerf, but it's definitely better for the game.
Yep.
The reroll saves are less of a thing. So, but I say less of a thing. They continue on in Slavestodarkness for the reroll saves of 1 with the Mark of Tzeentch. So wherever you can find that in Warhammer at the moment, that is really, really, really good.
Yep.
Especially on stuff like Archeon and Vanguard, where they've got an innate 3-up save. It means when you get to this unrendable save, you also get to reroll the 1, so it comes from like a 5/6 damage reduction to whatever 35/36 is.
Yeah.
A lot. Yes. So when you're fighting against, let's say, 50 pink horrors, they don't take any damage.
That's me.
Yeah.
I mean, they take some,
that was a targeted attack.
It was some, but it's just a hard work.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So,
yeah. Could you just for people who might be new, would you mind just like explaining how the save gets so good so quick?
Sure.
On the Vanguard.
So, on the Vanguard. So I take them in Knights of the Empty Throne, which allows the Vanguard that you take to become heroes. So that means you get access to in the new edition, you get access to all the stuff that the new heroes get, which is stuff like the best day ever. You get to, use command points on themselves, so all that defense. So you can see with those 2 base things, for basically doing nothing, 1 command point, and using up 1 of the heroic abilities, you get +2 to save. And that's without even trying. You do have to, and this comes to playing it, correctly. You do have to time that finest hour appropriately, because you only get to do that once. But stuff like Mystic Shield you can add to it as well. And now the Chaos Sorcerer Lords, both the Manticore and the on-foot version, instead of getting reroll saves, they get +1 to save. So I think that's 3 or 4 ways off the bat you can add +1 to save to the Vanguard. And they all stack. Well, they say they all stack. They'll all result in a 2-up save, ignoring Rend.
And then re-rolling ones from the Mark.
And then re-rolling ones from the Mark of Siege. Mark of Siege also gives you, from the General, the aura from the General, gives you a 5-up spell ignore.
Amazing.
Add that on top of the Vanguard's innate 5-up spell ignore, because as far as I'm aware, and someone please correct me, these aren't 2 wards, so you can stack them. You can, yeah. So they've got. So what do you do when you're up against a big armor save? You use mortal wounds.
Yeah.
But with like mentally, if I tell you I've got 2 5-up ignores for spells, you're probably not going to bother casting any on them.
No.
You think you're just going to waste them. So you can't really use spells against them. So the only sort of weapon you've really got against them that's effective is mortal wounds through other means, which aren't that common.
It's rarer. It's harder to achieve. I mean,
it's certainly not impossible, but it's more difficult.
It might be something we see become more common.
Yes.
And especially as you said, in reaction to the meta, like the counter pick might be like, okay, I'm going to make my army generally a bit worse, but can I plow through a Nagash or an Archeon? Although Archeon ignores mortal wounds on a 4+, which is worse. But like, am I going to be able to plow through the enemy unit that's a 2-up unrendable save with mortal wounds? So you might build into it, right?
Yeah, I think you either need to bring that at the moment anyway. I think you either need to bring that to the table or have some means of dealing with it.
Yeah, I would agree.
So that combination of stuff, I'd say, was the biggest. I think Knights as well, just because they're 4-up save, not quite as good as the Vanguard, but if you want Vanguard on a budget, they're pretty good for battle line as well. 3 wounds each, really tough.
Okay, we've had a question. The Vanguard that you would take, what weapon loadout would you take on them?
If in doubt, take demonic weapons. They give you a little bit of mortal wound chip damage and do D3 damage -1 rend. The only ones I don't really rate are Lancers, but I'm sure someone can think of a build somewhere. Ensorcelled weapons.
Yeah, that's specifically though because I imagine you're playing them as an attrition unit that's just going to stand there and keep fighting.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. You're right. It happens to be the way I play them, maybe more than the stats on the weapon itself.
Could you see Vanguard being useful outside of Knights of the Empty Throne?
Yeah. In the Archeon sub-faction, they get +1 to hit innately. They also get a list of buffs. I think there's 8 different buffs you can choose. Mm-hmm. So you can give them flying, which I think is great for some conversion stuff that you might have planned. If nothing else, also flying's amazing. But the most common one you'll see is +1 damage on the charge.
Yeah.
So at that point, you could make an argument for the ensorcelled weapons, which do 6 attacks each, and this is per model. So that's 18 for a group of 3. 3s, -1, and then 2 damage. That's 18 attacks at 2 damage.
Yeah.
And you very commonly, as I said at the beginning of Slaves to Darkness, it's so easy to get buffs on them. Expect full rerolls for, the buffed unit. So you're looking at, 3s, maybe 2s to hit with this new addition, and then 3s again rerolled, -1, 2 damage. Which it takes out most lightly armored foes, I would say, that combo.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, a 3-up mobile unit is just useful anywhere.
Yeah, of course. And they're so good, especially with their ability to pile and attack twice. Super useful. Okay, who else are them big winners?
Them big winners, I would say, a lot of the stuff. They've got Slaves to Darkness has got some access to some I'm not going to say great monsters, but interesting cheap monsters.
Okay.
So Foromoid Crusher, I think, is one of them. He's quite an interesting pick because he's quite a cheap monster with 10 wounds. I'm a bit nervous about recommending sort of these cheap monsters, as I have to be honest with you, I haven't quite made my mind up on them yet, whether they're useful or not. So they're useful. Let's say you had 3 cheap monsters, yeah.
Hmm.
So in turn 1, you can make that running grand strategy and
Yep.
get an extra bonus point for it. But in your opponent's phase, if they've got an easy monster kill, that gives them an extra victory point as well.
Yep.
So the question is whether you can make use of your monsters to gain multiple bonus points on your battle tactics, and whether that is better or worse than your opponent getting extra VPs for killing them.
Yeah.
If you
fair.
see the maths I'm trying to do in my head, I
Yeah.
haven't worked out the answer yet. I don't know if it's better or worse, but they certainly got that option, and
Yeah,
I think
that's
it's
fair.
interesting. There's also one pick which I couldn't decide whether it was a winner or a loser,
Okay.
and that's Bellacor,
Okay.
which is interesting
I mean,
because a lot of
huge update for Bellacor.
yeah, he's a winner in this meta because the ability to shut down a key piece on your opponent for 1 turn is pretty much worth its weight in gold. You could put it on like just that ability on its own. It doesn't really matter what model it's attached to, is absolutely godlike.
Yeah.
The reason I also think he's a bit of a loser, or I should say less good, not a loser,
Yeah.
less good, is because of his sort of ethereal save. It means he doesn't benefit from any of these bonuses to saves that the rest of the army is going to be getting.
Hmm.
So I remember my second because I played in your tournament last Sunday, I think it was.
Yep. Just
Well,
gone.
it was not even a week ago.
Not even a week
Christ.
ago.
Yeah. So yeah, and I played against I remember AD Mac,
Hmm.
and I got charged by I think 20 Marauders, and they just one shot Bellacor without even thinking about it. And they weren't even. I don't think they were even doing any rend. I think but the problem is because you can't buff that save, you're just absolutely at the mercy of what's going to come at you, and I think that makes him a bit weaker. So sad as it is, if you bring Bellacor, which I would recommend because he's in the current meta, because he shuts down a unit for a turn, maybe 2 if you get doubled, then you're probably going to have to deal with the fact he's going to die most games, I think.
Okay. Do you think the healing comes into effect in any way?
It does, but that doesn't help you if you're getting one shot.
Fair. That's super fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like Alariel. That healing is much more useful because it's pretty difficult to one shot something that's going to have like a 2-up save when you go into it. By no means impossible, but chip damage won't work.
No, chip damage doesn't work at all in the game anymore, right?
Yeah, chip damage is much less of a thing. So it's like kind of a bit all or nothing, and it's quite easy to go all in on Bellacor and come out, winning.
Yeah, of course. But
So that's why I'm like Bellacor. Yeah, good. Like I'm taking him in most of my lists because of the ability at the moment. But if the meta swings in such a way that big monstrous opponents are less of a thing, or that stupid dwarf goes away, then I'm probably might consider dropping him. Despite, got to say, one of the best models GW's ever produced, personally, I think.
But yeah, I can see what you mean. When people are saying, like, when people are running around him, Nagash. So important for people who might be new to know Bellacor's got an ability to shut down an opponent between 2 hero phase, from a hero phase to another hero phase. And,
yeah, I probably should explain that, shouldn't I? Yeah.
It's just okay. Like, I mean, sometimes we all just, like, there's so much assumed knowledge at this point.
Yeah, there is.
Like, it's not a problem. It's just but Bellacor's got an ability to shut down a model uniquely, actually, although not completely uniquely. There's like goading arrants for Lumineth Realm Lords. There are some examples of things that can be done super well, but that is such a key piece for shutting down because it's 340 points for Bellacor, so you can shut down. Or it might be, I can't remember what the points are. I think it's 340. But you might be shutting down like 1,000 points of Nagash or 995 of Nagash. So pretty key. So you think those are the only winners? You don't think things like a Khorne Demon Prince or Demon Princes in general?
Demon Princes, yes, because of the 3-up save, but I would say that they are no better or worse generally than they were in 2. And so I think they're winners. I think you'll see them. But maybe they're slightly better because the board's got a bit smaller. But I was kind of, when you asked me that, I was thinking of more stuff that, because of AOS 3, has got better or worse.
Yes, of course, of
So
course.
I'm thinking they're still great, but I think they're roughly the same, which is good.
Yeah,
Still decent.
that's
Yeah.
great news. Okay, so
Yeah.
what do you think's got worse because of Age of Sigmar 3? Who are the losers for Age of Sigmar 3?
This is going to upset some people.
Oh, well. I mean, that's life. Let's go.
So, disclaimer: I don't mean these things are bad. I just think they've got a little bit worse. Talking to you, mean people in the comments section.
Yeah.
Marauders, I think, have got a little bit worse.
Oh, well, they have definitely got worse. I don't think that's undeniable, right?
Well, I'm sure you'll find someone out there who passionately denies this. But yeah, they kind of have. Hordes are more difficult to get now, and you kind of need them in hordes to get that -1 rend. And again, -1 rend isn't as good as it used to be.
No.
I'd almost, if you assume that GW have pointed everything correctly, I would even say that no rend, because of the less points it would be more effective to take than stuff with rend.
Yeah.
Because -1 rend just doesn't seem to really. It doesn't cut through like it used to, because it's so easy for your opponent to go +1 save.
Yeah, which it never had like 4-up armor save dudes used to then be a 5-up armor save. 4-up armor save dudes now are still a 4-up save against rend. So a rend is effectively worse.
It might be a psychological thing, because I think if you went in with a -2 rend thing, I think your opponent's much less likely to use a CP on that, because they know you're going to cut through anyway.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. It's a weird state of affairs we're in at the moment, because I think a lot of the reactions you're going to see are purely psychological. So also, and this goes for stuff like clan rats and storm vermin. I believe Marauders, they have a 6+ save on their profile, and their shields that they carry around with them give them +1 save.
To the role and not the characteristic. It's an important distinction between things. Whenever you add +1 to the save, whenever you add +1 to the roll, it means then you can add things like all-out defense, but it's going to go into that kind of total. It's not going to take you from a 5 to a 4 to a 3. Instead,
exactly.
Yeah.
So people used to mentally think of Marauders with a 5-up save because everyone took shields.
Yes.
But they don't really have that. They have 6-up with a bonus 1, and so if you gave them Mystic Shield, they're still going to be a 5-up, which is this is hard for someone who doesn't really get the game to sort of get their head around. But because you can't stack saves anymore, their save is never going to be better than 5+, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
Well, you can roll, but let's ignore that. So I think they've got a little bit worse. I think you'll see him a lot, because you can't really argue with 90-point battle line that pretty much automatically makes a charge. But builds that you used to see were teleporting Marauders around and expecting them to get in and do lots of damage. I think those days are gone.
I agree. It's definitely what you used to see. You used to give them, and they used to have a bunch of buffs layered on top of them as well. Reroll saves, rerolls to hit, rerolls to wound, big teleport. Off they'd go, and they do, like you say, an automatic charge, and they would do the world. They do some pretty incredible work, and they were weirdly their difference between them and Chaos Warriors was night and day, and it was a really weird setup. So now they've definitely come more in line. Which I think makes the rest of the faction kind of have to open itself up to how it's going to play, because it's probably one of the most janky and weirdly complex armies that's available to play, unlike Lumineth Realm Lords, which really rewards you for just, you do X, I'm going to cast a spell, I do the command ability, super profit. And Slavestodarkness is wholly within, on a 3-up, next to this character, I might get X.
I don't want to be the guy that says that it's quite a big brain army, because I'm the one using it, and obviously all other armies are very smooth brain armies that you don't have to do very much in. But yeah, my army's totally a really difficult army to play, and only really smart people play it. Yeah,
I would say it's one of the harder armies to play. One of my shows that I'm going to do next week is I'm going to do a tier list of the difficulty of armies to play, and Slavestodarkness is right up there with tough.
Do you actually think so? Because the thing is, I haven't really got much else to compare it to at the moment. So I played a Skaven game last night, and I found playing Skaven super hard at the moment, super difficult, purely because there's okay, so I've got my big block of knights or Vanguard. I'm moving forward, and I know they're going to be on a 3-up, re-rolling 1 at worst. I move up a screen of clan rats to the middle of the board. They're dead. You just breathe at them, they're gone.
Yeah.
So, I do think they've become easy. I think they've definitely moved up a tier. I'm finding them easier to play at the moment, anyway.
Okay,
But,
well that's good. Yeah, you've got bigger tools, which I think is quite nice.
yeah, I genuinely think they were a B tier army before, and now they're an A tier army.
Okay, this is slaves.
Yeah, I think so. Someone feel free to correct me, and we're in early days at the moment, but it feels like they're very good at the save stacking.
Yeah, of course.
Which at the moment seems to be where the power. I think we're so early in the edition, it's hard to say. It kind of feels where the power is.
Yeah. All right. So So Marauders didn't do well, and I think that's good because Marauders needed to kind of. Vanish.
It was also who wants to paint 80 Marauders? I bloody did, and it wasn't enjoyable. I enjoy painting, big monsters. And,
yeah, you want to paint the
like
demon
that.
princes and
you do. That's so true. Yeah, you do. And so I think that's another good thing about this edition, quite frankly, is you get to paint the more fun stuff and play with the fun stuff.
Yes, that's true as well. You're like I'm going to paint some Vanguard, Bellacor, and also some some demon princes. Like this is pretty sweet. Yeah. Okay, so not Games Workshop demon princes. Thank you, Misaka Koala. Obviously, they're not the ones to paint ever, unless it makes some new ones. What other losers did we get from the Slaves of Darkness generally?
Chaos Sorcerer Lord on foot is one I've put down as
Okay.
well. Another potential controversial option there.
Okay.
Purely because, and this applies a little bit to the Manticore version as well, is they don't get reroll saves from Oracular Visions anymore, which was a big thing about them because you didn't have to cast it, you didn't have to pray for it, you just got it. You just had to make sure you were wholly within 12 of the target that you were going to do it on, so you had to think a turn ahead to make sure you're in the right place.
Yeah.
That's all you had to do. Now it's just +1 save. But honestly, that's still good. Because reroll saves are kind of gone across the board, +1 save has become a new power. So it's still very good. Another reason it's slightly and I don't mean bad. I don't mean bad. Mean people in the comments. I don't mean bad. The spell as well, because of access to stuff like All Out Attack. I don't know if you heard about that one. All Out Attack.
Not yet. I can't wait to find out.
And Super Happy Tuesdays, where you get +1 to wound. Getting +1 to hit and wound is similar.
Yeah.
On a character and you see I'm seeing a lot of characters. It's a similar effect to reroll hits and wounds. Not always as good, but if you're going, I think the maths is with me. If you've got something that's hitting and wounding on 3s, I think +1 to hit and wound is about the same as rerolls.
Okay.
Someone shoot me down.
Someone shoot me. Yeah, in the YouTube comments.
That's always how I've processed it in my head. I think if you're dealing with, if someone gives you -1 to hit and wound, I think maybe rerolls are better then. But on the whole, it's not a big loss now. So because it's easier to give +1 to hit and wound, the spell isn't as good. Still good, not as good. So he's gotten a little bit worse, I think. Another one that I don't necessarily think they've gotten a little bit worse. It just missed opportunity. Could do better. Is like all the range of cultists they've got. That sort of side of the book, I feel that they released a faction Idolaters in one of the Broken Realms book, which tries to address this by giving them the Marauder charge.
Yes.
And allows them to be battleline in that faction.
And does it allow them to take keywords as well? Like make
I
them
think
marks.
Might do, yeah.
So can we explain the marks out to people just in case because they might not be?
Sorry, I assume everyone knew.
That's okay.
So when you pick, there are 4 or maybe 5, depending on your point of view, chaos gods out there.
Yeah.
So with Slaves to Darkness, they worship these gods, and depending on which god they worship, they get a buff depending on it. So I've got any Slaves to Darkness around me at the moment. I've got this this really rubbishly painted and modelled demon prince.
Nice, perfect.
So he could be a Demon Prince of Khorne, he could be a Demon Prince of Tzeentch, a Demon Prince of Nurgle, and a Demon Prince of Slaanesh. Each one of those different marks will give you a slightly different buff depending on what you've chosen. In the Demon Prince's case, it actually gives you a different command ability as well. So Khorne, that gives you rerolls hits of 1, and if you happen to be the general, it's +1 to wound. This is super good. I love Khorne. I love Khorne. Like getting +1 to wound in a 12-inch or around your heroes is great.
Yeah.
That's the general buff. That's the souped up ones. There's a lesser and a bigger one. The 1+1 to wound. Aura, absolutely great. Nurgle, which is the one I used to go for, used to give you -1 to hit from shooting, which could become relevant again. And if you wound on a 6, you do an extra damage. Really good as well. Slaanesh, it gives you that Slaaneshi ability of 6s to hit, explode into 2 hits. Super good. And you can reroll run and charge rolls, I think.
Yeah.
And Tzeentch, which I think for the real... there's also Undivided. I can't really remember what Undivided does because, quite frankly, I never pick it.
It's like +1 bravery.
It's not...
or something.
Yeah, that's what they do with GW. Definitely run out of ideas, isn't it? Just +1 bravery. I think it gives you a ward as well, a 6-up ward, which is not nothing, but
Yeah.
I prefer the others. And Tzeentch, of course, which I think is the man of the moment, allows you to reroll saves of 1, which is amazing, and gives you that 5+ spell ignore, which is great on high value save targets, which, as I said, I think is where the power is at the moment.
Yeah, because I completely see what you're saying. Like elite units that already start with a good armor save already do better because of your access to all-out defense. So why not find an army like Slavestodarkness where you can then tack on, I'm going to ignore spells as well, which would be a whole sub-faction for some armies, but that's just a mark before you get to whatever sub-faction you're playing as, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it allows you, even from a narrative sense as well, it allows you to, make your army behave differently depending on which god they decide to worship, which I think is great as well.
Yeah.
I would also like to say the Slaves to Darkness book is possibly my favourite book, maybe tied with Skaven.
Okay.
Just because the sub-factions are all very viable. There's 6 of them now, and I think they're all great. And I don't think there's another book I can say that about. Not that I know particularly many books inside out, but I think you could have a really good go at getting some builds in just about all of the sub-factions available to you. I think the strongest at the moment is Knights of the Empty Throne, maybe Despoilers, but there's not a lot in it. You can have a go at any of the sub-factions and give a really good go with building an army, and it would be good, I think.
Okay, so talk to me about the... army list that you've been playing and thinking through, and how it works and what you're going on, or what's going on with it.
So the army I took to your event last Sunday is a Knights of the Empty Throne list. I was always going to do that because during lockdown I spent forever painting up these Vanguard. So I was really that was the first thing I was looking to do. Because I was like, well, I've got to make use of these bloody models. I spent ages painting them. So Knight of the Empty Throne was the obvious choice. And I think it works pretty well with the new edition. So you've got, in my list, you're going to have a block of 6 Vanguard, which count as the general. So also, disclaimer, when you start... having a group of models representing a hero or a general, you get lots of weird rules inconsistencies and expect a few conversations with the TO like I had with Rob before I even turned up. How does this work, Rob? No idea. Neither do I. Rule it. Stuff like that.
Because there aren't. They just aren't clear.
It isn't clear, and I think you can make a good argument either way. So one example I give to people is... So I've got a spell that turns my block of 6 Vanguard with 5 wounds into a monster. How many models does it count as when determining control of an objective? So monsters worth 5. Models worth 5.
Is each one a monster, or is the unit a monster?
So you could either say, you could make sound arguments for it's worth 5 points because the whole unit is a monster. Or you could say 5 times 6, so 30.
Yeah.
And I think you can make arguments for both.
I just
So
rolled 5.
Rob rules against me 3 times. I'm just going to put that out there. And then and then played me turn 1. I was just like, oh, isn't this a coincidence?
I think they were all fair judgments.
No, they were all honestly, they were all fine. I think you were wrong, but I think this is why I asked beforehand, because I was like, and it still plays really well, so I don't
Yeah,
really
very
care.
well.
I just don't.
Yeah.
I just don't like turning up on the day without knowing how my army's working. So, in fairness to you, you answered them very quickly, which is what a TO needs to do: make a decision and just move on.
Yeah, and
Sweet.
it's also important for people out there as well to know that there might be these conversations. If someone is
Yeah,
new,
I
or
was.
even if someone isn't new, just always contact your TO, because we're in
Yeah,
the early days. We know that
yeah,
there's another wave of FAQs coming soon, so we're
yeah.
hoping things like this will have been cleared up,
So,
right? That would be really important. But if they're not, someone's going to have to house rule it, basically.
yeah, and don't just turn up and expect it to work how you've been playing it, because you know if there's a rule that you're playing which doesn't quite, you're thinking, oh, this is naughty. Like you know if you're going to turn up and you're not entirely sure how this works, just ask.
Yeah,
Just, you might
yeah.
get shot down in flames like I was, but you get over it eventually, or have I? So you've got this group of 6 Vanguard, which count as your general. And because it's a hero, you get access to all the heroic actions we were talking about earlier. You'll have another unit of Vanguard, completely optional, and basically stuff that's around to support the Vanguard. I also included Bellacor on the list for meta reasons, as we discussed.
Yeah.
So things to support the Vanguard. I think I had a Sorcerer Lord on foot, although I'm probably going to upgrade that to a Manticore at some point. I had a Chaos Lord on foot as well for double piling. Vanguard get this once per battle, but with the Chaos Lord around, you can keep doing it as long as you've got CP. I've got a Chaos Shrine, which I think maybe should have been. Now I think about it, maybe should have. I've got slightly better because I think they count as totems. So,
Yes, they do. 18-inch range for command abilities.
Yeah, so that's good in and of itself. I don't think you need to have 2 or 3 like I was toting around in AOS 2, but they're still good. And some like a selection of battle line. I think I went with 1 lot of knights because I think knights are great at the moment.
Yeah.
And a chariot and some marauders because I needed to fill out the points. So that was the basis of the list, and it's basically, and I can't tell you after playing Skaven how nice it is to be able to push the Vanguard forward and just be like, come at me, bro. What are you going to do? Deal with this, because I don't know how you're going to deal with this. You also put the artifact on these 6 model units and give them the good 6-inch pile-in. And when I say the good 6-inch pile-in, I mean normally you have to stay outside 3 inches of other models and make a 3-inch charge. With 6-inch pile-in, you can pretty much just, as long as you're within 6 inches of an enemy model, which means you can move around, run, and do all sorts. You can pile in anyway. You can retreat, you can run, you can do all sorts. So it doesn't sound that good when you're reading the rules out loud, but just remember that the good 6-inch pile-in allows you to essentially retreat and charge and run and charge as well. And that's super powerful. Super, super powerful. So I always tell my opponent that my Vanguard have got like a 22-inch threat range turn 1. They move 10. They can run another 6 and then pile in another 6 if you happen to be within that. So make sure you're outside 22 inches of your opponent if they're playing, Knights of the Empty Throne Vanguard with that artifact.
Or redeploy away from them.
Yeah, that's one way of dealing with it. That definitely works, and it definitely makes me salty when people do that. So I remember the first time someone did that to me, and I was just like, oh, yeah, that's the thing now. That's the thing I've got to deal with. So, so that's one way of dealing with it. Like, you go 3 inches away from them, and if you redeploy and roll a 4+, they're going to be more... they're going to be more than 6 inches away, so I can't do my sneaky pile in. It makes me sad.
Yeah. I mean, that works really nicely. So that's that big brick of Vanguard, and then, like you said, you gave him the marker Zinch, so you can make them re-roll. I know Bellacor's in your list. Would you describe Bellacor as, in your opinion, an auto-include, like, at the moment?
At the moment, maybe. You see, I'm sighing as I say it. It's just like at the moment, yeah. If you go into a tournament, I think yeah. Um, like, so if your opponent gets a double turn in the time you don't want them to, I always found end the spells used to be a good way of sort of softening the blow of that a little bit. Like
Yeah.
a lot of people that don't play a lot of Age of Sigmar keep going on about how broken the double turn is, and it really isn't. If you just sort of you have to.
Play better.
Yeah, I was going to say a softer way of saying that. You got to think your way around it, but there are tools in the game that help you get around stuff like that, and the spells was one of them. You get more command points now, anyway, so the game's trying to help you out with that. And Bellacor's another one, so it's like, okay, if you're going to double turn me, fine, but that guy there is going to be under Bellacor's gaze. So that means in each phase, I roll a dice on a 3-up. He's not really contributing to that phase. You can't cast spells, you can't use command abilities, you can't pray, you can't run, fight, charge. So put it on Gotrek. I think he's going to be the number one target for it. He's got it. You've got to roll a 3-up. No, so let me phrase it another way. Your opponent has got to survive a 3-up to move, to charge, and to fight in order for him to do something. So that's 3-3-ups you've got to fail. And if you do that on your turn and they double turn you, that means he's going to be doing it for 2 turns.
Yes.
So it's a great double turn protection. because your opponent's going to know full well, oh, great, if I double turn him, Gottrek's going to be useless again. So I love mechanics like that because, you know, double turns are hard to deal with, but they're not impossible.
Yeah.
So that's why I rate him highly at the moment. Not if the meta changes, then he'll probably be sitting at the back of the shelf for a while. But at the moment, he's brilliant.
And that's just because of his ability to shut down big, expensive units, right?
It is literally that.
Not because have you not found him useful, like in combat or as a caster?
He's all right, but the problem is, as I said earlier, a lot of the Slaves to Darkness stuff, it's like got average stat line, but really good buffs.
Yeah.
A lot of the buffs won't work on him. A lot of the buffs won't work. Like a lot of the war shrines specify you got to be mortal. I think demonic power, which is the other common one from the Chaos Sorcerer Lord on foot, you also have to be mortal. So and he's got an undivided mark of chaos, and you can't give him another one, as far as I'm aware. Mm-hmm. So that means a lot of the buffs we were talking about earlier don't work on him.
Yeah.
So you can give him Super Happy Tuesday, and you can give him +1 to hit from all out attack. I don't know if there's much else you can give him, and that's kind of the problem. Like, when you're hitting and wounding on 3s, I think that pretty much chops your output in half by doing that. So 8 attacks with 3s and 3s will probably get to rend at about 4 of them. Someone correct me on the maths on that.
Yeah.
And so he's only going to have, in effect, if without buffs, he's only going to have 4 of his main attack, and then he's got 2 sort of 1 attack profiles, which are going to be hit and miss. So I don't rate him massively in combat, and his save being ethereal means you can't do like the super saves on him. So
and I guess also he's also a victory point that he's someone who could go and get victory points for you, extra because he's a monster, but he's also susceptible to going down. Like
he was also a 2-cast wizard though, so that's a very useful thing about him.
Yeah,
he's not
because you got some opportunities to unbinds as well, right?
Yeah, and Mystic Shield's great now. So you need a vessel to Mystic Shield.
Yeah,
may as well be him.
And he's also got the teleport spell potentially, like to
that's that. If you're unsure in Slave to Darkness, always take the teleport spell because that will win you the game. So, if you can teleport some Marauders into your enemy's backline when they forget about them, happens more times than you think. What else was I going to say about Bellacor, which is particularly useful? He's a big flying monster. But that's it. I can't remember what I was going to say. That 3-up shutdown ability is just worth its weight in gold, really. And he also happens to be a 2-casting wizard flying monster on top of that, which is nice.
Which is not really though. You're not too bothered about that. That's fascinating, actually. That's fascinating. And what else was in your list? You had Marauders. Anything else? Did you put in your list? Chaos War Shrine. Chaos War Shrine surely
Yeah.
Surely, like, can Chaos Warrior take curse? Is that not like
Yeah,
something
it
you're like
can, but
you're not too interested in that?
there's like the normal one I cast is on the Vanguard, and it gives them rerolls of hits and wounds.
Yeah,
As
that's
I
pretty
say,
good.
you can work around that with command points, but if you think about it this way, you've got 2 units of Vanguard going forward. Ideally, you want them both to be buffed. So you put the prayer on one of them, and then the other you can use the command abilities on. So they're both hitting really hard. So that's how I tend to think about it. The only problem is it happens on a 3-up, and you're pretty much at the mercy of the dice. So I think in your game, I got it every single time, but in other games I didn't get it off once. So
Okay.
yeah, so you're at the mercy of the dice for that one with the prayers. Only the idolater sub-faction, I think, makes that more reliable. And that's something I haven't really tried. Note to self, try idolaters. Yeah.
That means you've got to get yourself a lot of Warcry warbands on top as well to play idolaters.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want those war scrolls to be better, so I know I'm not wasting my time, basically. Yeah.
That's fair. That's
Yeah.
fair. Okay, so my question to you is: do you think that Slaves to Darkness can play well in the new edition?
Oh yeah, big time, big time. I think,
Okay.
I think as I said, I thought they were a B tier army before. Now I think they're A tier. We've got some S tier stuff like Daughters of Cain and Zinch. I think are probably S tier. This is just my own opinion, you know. But I think beneath that you've got stuff like Slaves to Darkness, which isn't broken good, but is really quite something, quite a force to be
Amazing.
reckoned with. Yeah, definitely.
Amazing. Well, Mark, thanks so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you
Uh,
very much for having me.
it's been a pleasure. No, it's lovely. It's lovely. Really nice having you on. Like, it's nice to know that you've like put a lot of thought into like this faction for this edition, and that there's still so much to break down about this
Been
faction. To be
trapped
honest.
inside for 2 years. I've been thinking about nothing else.
That's fair. That's fair. Have you got any shout outs before we head out today?
All of Team Wales,
Of course.
Flynn Houndar, and yeah, that's about it. The Owen Jackson, obviously.
Yeah, Mark, you're part of the Welsh, not ETC, Worlds team, the World Age of Sigmar Worlds Welsh team,
Welsh
whatever
team. Yeah,
the Welsh team. So the captain, in fact.
yeah.
Sorry, the captain, in fact.
Chief
Sorry.
cat herder.
Chief Cat Herder, yeah. Well, lovely. Thanks, Aaron. I'm going to shout out Arthur, because if I don't do that, I'll get shot at this stage. I want to thank the Twitch chat who've been here for the whole chat. Thanks to you. Loads of love. It's been cool hanging out with you today and doing these. Mark, thanks to you again. I'll include, so I'm going to get this list put on, Mark's going to send me the list. I'm going to put it on the wargamer.com, or Mark will put it up and he'll send it me,
I've already put it
whichever
up.
process. Oh, it's up. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's up on the website. It might get a write-up, it might not, but like you can go and check it out. And I'll get that included in the show notes. So if you want to listen to it on the podcast, or if you're listening to it on YouTube, you go and find that, get the link, and you can go grab that. So that'd be cool to read and chill with. And Mark, thanks for being on the show. It's been lovely having you on, and thanks for listening to us, Wargamer, everyone. We'll see you guys soon. Goodbye.
Bye.